I noticed the sign before I noticed the fence. A clean white post planted deep into the dirt, red letters screaming "Sold" like a declaration of war. It stood exactly where my truck's GPS said nothing should exist, right in the middle of Lot 17. My lot. I sat there longer than I meant to, engine idling, hands loose on the wheel, staring at it the way you stare at a wrong answer that refuses to explain itself. The afternoon heat pressed through the windshield, but the chill spreading through my chest had nothing to do with temperature. Hey everyone, if you're watching this, I want to hear from you. Should an HOA ever be allowed to claim abandoned land? Comment below, have you seen an HOA overreach like this? Also, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our amazing stories. That night, the HOA email hit my inbox with the cheerful ping of routine correspondence, polite tone, smiling language. The association is pleased to announce the sale of the long vacant Lot 17 to a valued community family. My stomach tightened into a fist. Vacant didn't mean abandoned, vacant didn't mean unowned, and it certainly didn't mean theirs to sell. I pulled up the county assessor's website and stared at my own name, still listed as legal owner, just to confirm that reality hadn't shifted while I wasn't paying attention. The screen glowed back at me, steady and certain. My name, my property, their audacity. 2 mornings later, the sound of metal biting into earth echoed across the lot before I'd finished my coffee. Fence posts, fresh holes punched into ground that belonged to me. A contractor I didn't recognize was already 3 posts deep when I arrived, his truck crooked across the grass I'd paid taxes on for 11 years. When I told him he was standing on private property, he barely looked up from his post-hole digger. "Take it up with the HOA president," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I'm paid either way." That was when the unease turned heavy, when I realized money had already changed hands, plans had already been made, and someone had decided my ownership was merely an inconvenience to work around. Karen Whitlock arrived 10 minutes later in her HOA-branded SUV, sunglasses pushed up into her silver-streaked hair, clipboard hugged to her chest like armor. She didn't ask questions, she announced conclusions. The lot had been abandoned, she explained with practiced patience. The HOA had reclaimed it under community maintenance provisions. She spoke slowly, deliberately, the way people do when they expect compliance rather than conversation. When I told her she had authorized the sale of land she didn't own, her smile thinned but refused to disappear entirely. "It was vacant," she repeated, as if repetition could manufacture legality. She produced the deed like a trophy, photocopied, slightly wrinkled, clearly rushed through whatever process she had invented. Sale price, $1. Buyer, Tyler Whitlock, her son. The connection clicked into place so cleanly it was almost impressive in its brazenness. I photographed the document without asking permission. Karen leaned closer, dropping her voice to something between warning and threat. "HOAs exist to clean up neglect. You should have been paying more attention." Then she turned and walked back to her SUV, radiating the confidence of someone who believed authority was the same thing as truth. That evening, as the sun dropped toward the tree line, I hammered certified survey stakes into the ground myself, stamped, official, positioned with precision that left no room for interpretation. They cut straight through her fence line like a quiet accusation written in wood and metal. Across the street, Karen stood watching from her driveway, arms crossed tight against her chest, lips pressed into a colorless line. I raised my hand, not friendly, not aggressive, just certain, the wave of someone who knows exactly where they stand. She didn't wave back, she just watched until the last stake was set, then disappeared inside without a word. The county recorder's office smelled like decades of dust and slowly dying paper, the kind of place where convenient lies came to suffocate under the weight of documentation. Mr. Alvarez, gray-haired and unhurried, didn't look impressed when I explained my situation. He didn't look annoyed either. He simply listened with the patience of someone who had heard variations of this story before, fingers folded on his desk, eyes steady behind wire-rimmed glasses.
Then he typed my parcel number into his system and turned the monitor so I could see. My name appeared instantly. No gaps in the chain of title, no transfers, no mystery, no HOA anywhere in the ownership history. He leaned back in his chair and said what I already knew but desperately needed someone official to confirm out loud. This property was never conveyed, not to an HOA, not to anyone. You've held continuous title since your original purchase. The deed Karen was waving around hadn't been recorded. Worse, it couldn't have been recorded because the HOA never possessed the legal standing to convey property they didn't own. Mr. Alvarez printed a certified ownership statement, pressed the county seal into blue ink, and slid it across the counter with the gravity of a verdict. Someone attempted a private transfer without valid title, he said carefully, choosing his words like a man who understood their implications. He asked if construction had begun. I told him about the fence. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and he made a note I couldn't read. By the time I returned to the lot, the fence work had stopped. Tyler Whitlock stood alone among the half-installed posts, staring at my survey stakes like they'd personally insulted his family name. He looked younger up close than I had expected, less confident than his mother's swagger had suggested. When I handed him the certified ownership record, watching his eyes move across the official language, his face lost color in stages. "My mom said the HOA reclaimed it legally," he muttered, the words sounding rehearsed and suddenly hollow. I didn't argue. I didn't need to. The paper did the talking for me. He folded the document once, then twice, then again, as if reducing its size might somehow diminish what it meant. That night, the HOA board convened an emergency meeting, not publicly announced, not open to residents, just quiet emails in a locked conference room at the community center. I heard about it afterwards from a neighbor whose husband sat on the board. Karen spoke first, fast, defensive, sharp as broken glass. She insisted I was confused about my own property. She suggested I was trying something, though she never specified what. But when one board member asked directly why the county still showed my name as owner, Karen snapped that the county was notoriously slow to update records. The room had gone quiet. No one laughed, no one agreed, and when another member asked why the sale price was exactly $1 to her own son, Karen's mouth opened and closed without an answer. The next morning, a legal notice appeared taped to what remained of the fence: cease and desist, unauthorized construction, unauthorized occupation of private property, potential criminal trespass charges pending. The contractor returned only long enough to load his equipment and leave, refusing to meet Karen's eyes when she appeared demanding he finish the job. Tyler didn't come back at all, and suddenly the lot that had been so confidently reclaimed stood empty again, fence posts abandoned like broken promises. Karen finally emailed me directly that afternoon. The confidence had evaporated from her prose. The smile I could usually hear in her community announcements was absent. Just a single clipped sentence asking me to pause all actions while the HOA reviews this matter internally. I didn't respond to her. Instead, I forwarded the county certified ownership statement to my attorney, copying every member of the HOA board. By sundown, Karen's phone was ringing with calls she couldn't control, board members demanding explanations, the association's attorney asking questions that had no good answers, residents who had heard rumors and wanted confirmation. The lie had escaped the careful container of HOA authority. An official paper doesn't bend when someone with a clipboard pushes against it.
For the first time since that sign appeared in my ground, Karen Whitlock looked genuinely worried. The sheriff's cruiser arrived without fanfare. No lights, no sirens, no drama, just a quiet presence that changed everything. Officer Dana Brooks parked at the curb and walked the property line with methodical patience, her eyes following the survey stakes, the disturbed soil, the abandoned fence posts standing like evidence of interrupted ambition. She listened to my account without interrupting, then compared my certified deed to the HOA paperwork Karen had provided the board. She didn't take sides. She didn't need to. The documents spoke clearly enough. She nodded once and said the words out loud, officially, on record. "This land belongs to you. It never stopped belonging to you." Karen arrived late and already angry, her voice raised before her car door had fully closed. She tried to speak over everyone simultaneously, citing bylaws, invoking community authority, referencing reclamation clauses that existed only in her imagination. Officer Brooks stopped her with one raised hand. Calm, professional, immovable. "This started as a civil matter," she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who understood exactly where lines existed. "It's becoming criminal, and right now, all available evidence indicates you personally authorized trespass and possibly fraud." Karen's momentum collapsed mid-sentence. The word criminal landed harder than any accusation I could have made. Tyler appeared shortly after, eyes red-rimmed, jaw set with the tension of someone who had spent the night arguing with his mother and losing. He didn't look at Karen when Officer Brooks asked who had ordered the fence installation. He answered honestly, his voice flat with exhaustion and something that might have been relief. "She did. She arranged everything. I just signed where she told me to sign." The silence that followed pressed down on all of us. Karen opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again without producing words. For the first time, she seemed to grasp that her HOA title offered no protection here. The board's attorney arrived next, uninvited and already wearing defeat on his face like a confession. He was a thin man in an expensive suit that suddenly seemed ill-fitting, and he spoke quietly with Officer Brooks before approaching Karen with the careful distance of someone managing contamination. Words like self-dealing and fraudulent conveyance and unauthorized transfer floated through the air just loud enough for the gathering neighbors to hear. Phones emerged from pockets, notes were taken, screenshots captured. The HOA bubble that had protected Karen's authority for years was cracking open in full public view, and everyone present understood they were watching something that couldn't be walked back. By evening, Karen's access to all HOA accounts had been frozen. Not by the sheriff, by her own board. An emergency vote conducted over email, unanimous except for Karen's abstention. Temporary suspension pending investigation, they called it. Procedural necessity. Everyone understood it was survival. The board needed distance from Karen Whitlock immediately, and they weren't subtle about creating it. A formal notice from the county arrived the following morning, delivered by certified mail to Karen's home address, with copies sent to the HOA's registered agent and my attorney. It stated plainly, in language that left no room for creative interpretation, that no legal transfer of Lot 17 had occurred, that the attempted sale was void from inception, and that any further action on the property by the HOA or its officers could result in criminal prosecution. Karen's name appeared in the document 3 times. No honorific preceded it, no title softened it, just her name, linked permanently with words like unauthorized and fraudulent and void. I drove past the lot at dusk that evening, slowing as I approached. The fence was gone, every post poled, every hole filled, the ground raked smooth as if construction had never begun. The sold sign had vanished too, leaving only a small depression where the post had stood. Just bare ground again, quiet under the fading orange light, looking exactly as it had for the 11 years I'd owned it. Except, now everyone in the neighborhood knew what had almost happened here, and everyone knew who had tried to make it happen. Karen Whitlock still lived 4 houses down, but she no longer had the authority to pretend. The district attorney's office didn't move with urgency, but they moved with the kind of deliberate momentum that gathers force over time. A formal request for documents went out first. Emails, meeting minutes, financial records, communications between Karen and the contractor, correspondence regarding the sale. Karen was required to surrender her HOA laptop and phone for forensic review. What she had characterized as a simple community transaction now carried terminology like misrepresentation, breach of fiduciary duty, and self-dealing in official correspondence that copied multiple agencies. She stopped answering phone calls that didn't come from her attorney's office. Her SUV stayed in the driveway. Her presence at neighborhood events ceased entirely. The board scrambled to get ahead of the damage.
At the next open meeting, genuinely open this time, with attendance that exceeded any gathering in the HOA's history, they voted unanimously to formally void the sale, issue a written apology to me by name, and acknowledge in their official minutes that Lot 17 had never been HOA property at any point in the association's existence. The community room was standing room only. Residents who had remained silent through years of Karen's reign were suddenly attentive, asking questions, demanding answers. When Karen's name was mentioned during the proceedings, people physically looked away, as if her disgrace might be contagious. Authority, I realized, is remarkably fragile once everyone sees that it was constructed from nothing but assumption and compliance. Tyler signed a sworn statement within the week. He sat across from my attorney in a conference room that smelled of leather and old coffee, and he admitted everything without resistance. He had paid $1. He had relied entirely on his mother's assurances that the transaction was legal. He had conducted no independent research, consulted no outside attorney, performed no title search. He had no legitimate claim to the land, and never had. He signed each page with the mechanical motions of someone who just wanted the nightmare to end. That statement closed the last door his mother might have used to escape accountability. The county recorder, Mr. Alvarez, issued a final notice the following week. It affirmed my continuous ownership in language that would survive any future challenge, and it recorded an official affidavit documenting the attempted fraudulent conveyance. The affidavit didn't transfer anything. It simply created a permanent record of what had been attempted, a mark in public archives that would never fade or expire. Anyone searching Karen Widlock's name in connection with property records would find it. Anyone conducting due diligence on future transactions involving her would discover it. The document would outlive all of us, a permanent testament to what happens when someone mistakes authority for ownership. Karen resigned before any criminal charges could be formally announced. Not at a meeting, not with a speech or explanation, just an email, 2 sentences long, citing personal reasons and effective immediately. Her HOA access was terminated within the hour. Door codes changed, email forwarded to the new interim president, her name removed from all official documentation. The board elected a replacement who promised transparency, external audits, and a complete review of all property-related decisions made during Karen's tenure. Nobody applauded the transition. They were too busy establishing distance, protecting themselves, rewriting history to minimize their own complicity in years of looking the other way.
A civil settlement followed, negotiated quietly between attorneys in conference rooms I never entered. Karen agreed to cover all legal costs I had incurred, attorney fees, survey expenses, filing fees, everything. She agreed to pay damages for the fence installation, the signage, the trespass, the emotional distress of watching someone try to steal what I had legally owned for over a decade. The total wasn't publicized, but I heard later it was substantial, enough to matter, enough to hurt. The HOA's insurance carrier refused to cover any portion of the settlement. Self-dealing voided the relevant policy provisions entirely. Karen had acted outside the scope of her authority for personal benefit in violation of her fiduciary duties. The carrier's denial letter was detailed and emphatic. That single decision ended more than Karen's position on the board. It ended her financial standing in the community. The house 4 doors down went up for sale 3 months later. She moved before the listing went active. The criminal case resolved quietly, as these things often do when the defendant has resources and the evidence is overwhelming. Karen pleaded to a reduced charge, something involving fraudulent documents and misuse of organizational authority. No jail time, but probation, community service, and a permanent record that would follow her into whatever life she built elsewhere. The local paper ran a small story. Neighbors shared it without comment. Everyone understood what it meant without needing to discuss it. Months passed, seasons changed. I walked my lot on a cool evening when the leaves had just started to turn, feeling the ground solid beneath my feet. No signs, no stakes, no fence posts, just open land and clean boundaries. exactly as it should have been all along. Neighbors nodded when they passed on the sidewalk. Some offered awkward apologies for not speaking up sooner, for not questioning Karen's authority when questions might have mattered. Others simply looked relieved that the situation had resolved, that the neighborhood could return to its quiet rhythms without the weight of unfinished conflict. The new HOA board never mentioned reclaimed land again. The phrase disappeared from their vocabulary entirely, replaced by careful language about proper procedures and legal review and respecting established ownership. They sent me a formal letter acknowledging my property rights, signed by every board member, as if the document could erase what had almost happened. I filed it with my other records and didn't think about it again. Ownership, I learned, doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't need to shout or threaten or posture. It just needs to be documented, recorded, preserved in systems that exist precisely to resist the pressure of people who believe their authority supersedes the law. And once the paper speaks, once the stamps are pressed and the seals are fixed and the records are entered into systems designed to outlast human memory, even the loudest, most confident Karen has nothing left to say. The lot sits empty still, quiet, waiting for whatever I decide to do with it, whenever I decide to do it. Sometimes I drive past, just to look at it, just to remember that some things can't be taken simply because someone decides they should be. The land was never theirs. It was always mine. And now, everyone knows it.